The sun beats down on a weathered vacation home nestled among orange groves on Florida's forgotten coastline. Inside those walls, passion collided with betrayal, leaving one person dead and another forever changed. Have you ever wondered what truly happens behind closed doors? How many families harbor secrets that would devastate them if revealed? What invisible forces drive people to cross boundaries they once thought impossible? Today's story isn't just about murder. It's about how isolation becomes the perfect breeding ground for forbidden desires. When 19-year-old Derek Fulton arrived at his family's remote Florida vacation home for one last summer escape, he never imagined he'd leave in handcuffs. His stepmother Veronica dead at the bottom of the grand staircase. What drives a young man to become entangled in a lethal affair with the woman his father married? And how does such an affair transform from whispered confessions to bloodshed? Before we continue, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Our True Crime Village community discusses these shocking cases in the comments, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what warning signs might have prevented today's tragedy. Like this video if you've ever been fascinated by how quickly relationships can transform from comfort to danger. The vacation home stood like an aging sentinel, a palatial villa with peeling pastel paint and wrought iron balconies, miles from prying neighbors. Its isolation made it the perfect stage for secrets. Sun-bleached curtains barely moved in the humid air, and the sprawling property with its overgrown gardens and cloudy swimming pool created a world cut off from reality. This private paradise became a pressure cooker of emotions. No witnesses except distant staff. No interruptions. No escape from temptation. Just endless Florida heat pressing against windows, magnifying desires better left unexplored, and providing the perfect backdrop for a relationship that would violate every boundary, until it ultimately exploded in violence. Derek Fulton stood at the crossroads of adolescence and adulthood. A lanky 19-year-old with observant eyes that missed little but revealed less. Quiet by nature, he possessed the gift of blending into backgrounds while absorbing everything around him. His childhood fractured early when his biological mother died unexpectedly, leaving a void his father's constant business trips could never fill. College loomed in Derek's future, but uncertainty clouded his path. Without strong guidance, he drifted between ambitions, sometimes dreaming of architectural design, other times considering business like his father. This indecision masked deeper needs: validation, belonging, connection to someone who truly saw him. Throughout high school, teachers described him as bright but withdrawn, a young man who excelled academically while remaining emotionally guarded. Veronica Hale entered their lives when Derek was 10, a sophisticated woman with fading modeling aspirations who married his father after a whirlwind romance. At 42, she carried herself with practiced grace, her beauty not diminished but transformed by time. Her allure came less from conventional attractiveness and more from knowing glances and carefully chosen words that made listeners feel momentarily special. Behind Veronica's composed exterior lay a woman wrestling with disappointed dreams. Marriage to wealthy businessman Robert Fulton provided financial security but little emotional fulfillment. No children of her own, a career abandoned, and a husband perpetually absent left her clutching at fragments of purpose. She poured herself into interior design projects and charity fundraisers while drinking wine alone most evenings. The Fulton household operated like separate planets in reluctant orbit. Robert, constantly traveling, appeared mainly through video calls and occasional weekend visits. His love manifested in material provisions rather than presents. Private schools for Derek, designer clothes for Veronica, and elaborate vacation properties that sat empty most years. Veronica attempted motherhood with Derek initially, attending school functions, preparing meals, establishing routines. But as he grew older and more independent, their relationship settled into polite distance. They existed in the same expansive house, yet rarely connected beyond superficial conversations about schedules and household matters. Family gatherings became performances of normalcy. Holiday dinners where tension simmered beneath forced smiles. Vacations where father, son, and stepmother occupied the same physical space while emotionally worlds apart. Every relationship within this triangle remained tenuous, maintained by unspoken agreements to avoid deeper issues. When Robert announced a 6-week business trip to Asia, suggesting Derek and Veronica use the Florida property, neither objected. Derek saw opportunity for solitude before college began. Veronica welcomed escape from empty routines. Neither anticipated how dramatically their carefully maintained distance would collapse in the isolation of that remote coastal property. Their first week at the Florida home passed in mutual avoidance. Derek spent days exploring nearby beaches or reading in the garden, while Veronica occupied herself with phone calls and reorganizing rooms. They orbited each other cautiously, exchanging only necessary words about meals or household matters. That dynamic shifted on the 8th night. Unable to sleep in the humid darkness, Derek wandered the hallways at 2 a.m. A soft light spilled from beneath the door of his father's study. Inside, he found Veronica sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by old photographs and an open bottle of red wine. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, her voice slightly blurred at the edges. The air conditioner had failed again, leaving the night air thick and close. Derek hesitated at the threshold, then stepped inside. "It's too hot." He noticed tear tracks on her cheeks, partially disguised by shadows. "Come look at these," she said, gesturing toward faded photos of his father in college. He was different then, alive somehow. That innocent conversation lasted until dawn, reminiscing about Derek's childhood, Veronica's abandoned career, shared frustrations with Robert's emotional distance. Something shifted between them as night yielded to morning. A boundary dissolved, replaced by dangerous familiarity. The following days brought lingering glances, conversations that trailed into silence laden with unspoken thoughts. They began preparing meals together, glasses of wine extending into late discussions where personal space gradually diminished. Derek found himself noticing details he'd overlooked for years: how Veronica's laughter transformed her face, the graceful movement of her hands when emphasizing points, her evident loneliness mirroring his own. Veronica, starved for meaningful connection, recognized in Derek qualities his father once possessed: thoughtfulness, genuine interest in her thoughts, appreciation for her beyond ornamental value. Their isolation intensified every interaction, magnifying emotions usually diluted by daily distractions. The line was crossed on a stormy afternoon 2 weeks into their stay. Thunder rattled windows as they huddled in the living room, power outage plunging the house into premature darkness. A brush of hands while lighting candles turned into fingers intertwining. Neither pulled away. The forbidden kiss that followed carried years of accumulated loneliness, misplaced needs, and mutual vulnerability. What emerged wasn't love but a volatile concoction of psychological wounds seeking remedy in the wrong place. Derek, emotionally abandoned by both his deceased mother and distant father, found validation and nurturing twisted into inappropriate intimacy. Veronica, whose identity had dissolved into being someone's wife while her own dreams withered, discovered power in being desired by someone who looked at her with genuine need. Each subsequent encounter came wrapped in self-justification. They weren't hurting anyone. Robert had emotionally abandoned them both. Their connection felt necessary, inevitable, a secret alliance against years of neglect. Yet underneath these rationalizations lay recognition of transgression, evidenced by closed curtains, whispered conversations, hyper-awareness of staff schedules. Their relationship existed in shadowed corners of the sprawling property. Brief embraces in the garden's hidden alcoves, conversations with double meanings when others might overhear, nights when one slipped into the other's room only to disappear before sunrise. Each secret moment strengthened their dangerous bond while simultaneously undermining their grip on reality and consequences. As weeks passed, their forbidden relationship intensified like a fever. What began as furtive glances and hesitant touches evolved into an addiction neither could control. The isolation that initially provided safety now fueled their recklessness. They grew bolder, swimming naked in the pool at midnight, leaving bedroom doors unlocked, exchanging intimate texts despite sharing the same house. Their caution fractured under mounting desire. One evening, they barely separated before Maria, the weekly housekeeper, arrived unexpectedly early. Another afternoon, they lost track of time in the boathouse, causing them to miss a scheduled call with Robert. Each narrow escape added adrenaline to their encounters rather than warning. "We should be more careful," Veronica would whisper afterward, her concern genuine yet forgotten within hours. Derek began photographing Veronica, innocent portraits at first, evolving into increasingly compromising images. These digital breadcrumbs would later become crucial evidence, though neither considered consequences as they documented their transgression. By the fourth week, their relationship transformed. Initial tenderness gave way to possessive intensity. Derek grew jealous when Veronica spoke with the groundskeeper too long. Veronica checked Derek's phone while he showered. Their psychological wounds fed the relationship's toxicity. His abandonment issues and her fear of invisibility creating a destructive symbiosis. The first concrete suspicion came from Luis, the pool maintenance worker who arrived unannounced and glimpsed them embracing in the kitchen. His expression revealed momentary shock before he retreated, mumbling apologies. Veronica later pressed cash into his hand, saying, "For your discretion," a clumsy attempt at damage control that only heightened his awareness. Maria noticed misplaced items, men's clothing in Veronica's room, wine glasses on Derek's nightstand. She observed how they stopped speaking mid-sentence when she entered rooms, how their bodies angled toward each other unconsciously. Though she said nothing directly, her disapproving glances communicated volumes. The most dangerous witness emerged in Elizabeth Fulton, Robert's sister, who arrived unannounced for a 3-day visit. From the moment she stepped through the door, her sharp eyes cataloged inconsistencies. Derek's hand lingering on Veronica's lower back, private jokes exchanged without context, the unmistakable current of tension flowing between them. "You two seem different," Elizabeth remarked over dinner on her second night. "Almost like you've developed your own language." The comment hung in the air, loaded with unspoken accusation. Derek knocked over his wine glass, crimson liquid bleeding across white linen, a visual manifestation of their secret spilling beyond control. If you're watching this video and have ever noticed subtle signs that something inappropriate was happening in a family, hit like right now. The warning signs are often there, but we miss them. Drop a comment sharing what you think are the most overlooked red flags in family dynamics. Your insight might help others recognize dangerous situations before they escalate. Elizabeth's presence forced temporary restraint, but once she departed, their relationship resurged with renewed intensity. The near discovery heightened rather than diminished their recklessness. They began leaving evidence almost deliberately. A careless text visible on Veronica's unlocked phone, Derek's university sweatshirt draped over her bedroom chair. This self-destructive pattern revealed deeper psychological currents. For Derek, the relationship represented rebellion against his father's emotional abandonment. For Veronica, it offered illusory power in a life where she'd become decorative rather than essential. Each secret encounter provided temporary escape from their respective voids while simultaneously digging them deeper. Their affair became a runaway train, gathering momentum toward inevitable disaster. Neither recognized how thoroughly they'd abandoned rational thought, how completely they'd surrendered to impulses that would destroy everything familiar. The isolation that had initially enabled their transgression now accelerated their downfall, removing safeguards that might have prevented the approaching tragedy. The weather forecast predicted a Category 2 hurricane would miss their coastal location, instead delivering only heavy rainfall and strong winds. As dark clouds gathered over the Gulf, the atmosphere inside the vacation home grew equally turbulent. 5 weeks into their stay, hairline fractures appeared in their illicit bond. That morning, Derek received an acceptance letter from a prestigious East Coast university, one 3,000 miles from where Veronica lived. The news should have brought celebration. Instead, it introduced an expiration date to their affair. "We need to talk about what happens after summer," Derek said, finding Veronica arranging flowers in the sunroom as rain began lashing windows. "There is no after summer for us," she replied without turning. "We both know this ends when we leave Florida." Her dismissive tone ignited something possessive in Derek. Throughout the day, tension built between them, conversations becoming increasingly strained. By evening, when the storm intensified, cutting power to the house. Their emotional landscape matched the violent weather outside. Wind howled around the property as they moved through candlelit rooms like wary combatants. The romantic atmosphere that might have existed weeks earlier had dissolved into suffocating pressure. 3 half-empty wine bottles stood on the kitchen counter, evidence of Veronica's attempt to numb mounting anxiety. "You're drinking too much," Derek observed, watching her pour another glass. "And you're becoming too attached," she countered. "This was never meant to be real, Derek. You understand that, right?" The statement landed like a physical blow. In the flickering candlelight, Derek's expression hardened, revealing how completely he'd misinterpreted their relationship. "Not real? These past weeks felt pretty real to me." "You're 19, Veronica said, voice softening slightly. "I'm your father's wife. What exactly did you think would happen?" Thunder crashed directly overhead as Derek moved toward her. "I thought you cared about me, that we understood each other." "I do care about you," she insisted, backing away. "But we've been living in a fantasy. Your father returns next week. Your university starts next month. Reality is coming whether we're ready or not." This conversation marked a critical shift in their power dynamic. Veronica, attempting to reclaim control by defining their relationship as temporary, underestimated how deeply Derek had emotionally invested. Her practical compartmentalization collided with his all-consuming intensity. "You're just like him," Derek accused, voice dropping dangerously. "Using people until they're inconvenient." "That's not fair," Veronica protested. "We both participated in this. Neither of us considered consequences." Their argument escalated as the storm reached its peak intensity. Accusations flew between lightning flashes. Derek claiming manipulation, Veronica countering with charges of emotional immaturity. Each revealed resentments previously masked by physical connection. "Did you ever actually care about me?" Derek demanded, crowding her space. "Or was I just available entertainment while my father was away?" Fear flickered across Veronica's face for the first time. "You're scaring me right now." "Good," he replied. "Maybe you should be scared. Maybe you should feel something real for once." When Veronica attempted to leave the room, Derek grabbed her wrist. Not violently but firmly enough to demonstrate physical control. This crossing of boundaries shocked them both. He immediately released her, horror replacing anger. "I would never hurt you," he whispered. "You already are," she answered. The confrontation concluded without resolution, both retreating to separate rooms as the hurricane gradually weakened outside. But psychological damage had been done. Their relationship had transformed from mutual escape into psychological warfare. Lines had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Throughout the night, Derek paced his room, alternating between desperate plans to maintain their relationship and bitter resentment at being discarded. Veronica sat motionless at her vanity, staring at her reflection while touching the faint red mark on her wrist, physical evidence of their deteriorating connection. By dawn, when Veronica's phone chimed with a text from Elizabeth Fulton announcing her immediate return to discuss concerns, both recognized their fabricated world was collapsing. They had less than 12 hours before external reality invaded their isolated domain. Elizabeth Fulton arrived at 8:17 a.m., the gravel driveway announcing her Mercedes before the doorbell chimed. Derek watched from his bedroom window as Veronica greeted her with forced cheerfulness, guiding her into the house. Their hushed voices drifted upstairs, tension evident even without distinguishable words. He showered and dressed slowly, postponing the inevitable confrontation. When he finally descended, they sat in rigid silence at the kitchen table, coffee untouched between them. Elizabeth's expression hardened as he entered. "We were just discussing your relationship," Elizabeth stated flatly. "Veronica claims I misinterpreted what I observed during my visit." Sunlight streamed through windows still speckled with raindrops from the previous night's storm. The landscape appeared cleansed, in stark contrast to the contaminated atmosphere inside. "There's nothing to discuss," Derek replied, avoiding Veronica's pleading gaze. "I disagree," Elizabeth countered, placing her phone on the table. Maria sent me these photos yesterday. She turned the screen toward them. Images of discarded clothing outside Veronica's bedroom. Wine glasses on the patio. Derek and Veronica embracing by the pool. My brother deserves to know what's happened in his absence. Veronica's composure crumbled. Elizabeth, please. This isn't what it appears. Stop lying, Derek interrupted. This is exactly what it appears. A reckless determination had replaced his earlier uncertainty. Elizabeth stood abruptly. I'm calling Robert now. You both need professional help. What followed occurred with devastating speed. As Elizabeth moved toward the hallway, phone in hand, Veronica lunged to stop her. Derek intervened, grabbing Veronica's arm. Momentum carried all three toward the staircase landing. Let go of me, Veronica shouted, twisting violently to free herself from Derek's grip. The struggle intensified, three bodies in frantic motion. When Elizabeth stumbled backward against the banister, Veronica reached to steady her. Derek, misinterpreting this gesture as aggression, shoved between them. His college football physique easily overpowered Veronica's slight frame. Veronica's eyes widened in the moment before losing balance. No scream escaped her lips, just a soft exhalation of surprise as she toppled backward down the curved staircase. The sickening thud of her body, hitting the marble floor below, echoed through the house. Blood pooled beneath her head within seconds, her body unnaturally still. Elizabeth's scream finally broke the paralyzing silence. What have you done? She whispered, backing away from Derek. What have you done? Derek descended the stairs in slow motion, kneeling beside Veronica's broken form. Her eyes stared emptily at the chandelier above, the slight angle of her neck confirming what her stillness suggested. His hands hovered above her body, afraid to touch what he had destroyed. It was an accident, he murmured, voice hollow. I didn't mean to push her. Elizabeth, trembling violently, dialed emergency services. Her voice cracked as she reported a death at the Fulton vacation home. Derek remained motionless beside Veronica, shock temporarily insulating him from comprehension. Blood soaked into his knees as he knelt on the marble floor, staring at the woman who had been his lover only hours before. First responders found him in the same position 20 minutes later, a tableau of tragedy frozen in morning light. Detective James Morrison arrived at the scene within 40 minutes, bringing a forensic team and county medical examiner. They documented the blood spatter pattern, photographed the staircase angle, and collected samples from beneath Veronica's fingernails. Elizabeth and Derek were separated for questioning, their contradicting accounts immediately raising suspicion. The physical evidence doesn't support an accidental fall, Morrison later testified. The bruising on the victim's arm matched the suspect's handprint. Her neck fracture required significant force beyond what typical stairs would cause. 3 days after Veronica's death, police discovered intimate photographs on Derek's phone. Text messages revealed their relationship's progression and increasing volatility. Elizabeth's statement about witnessing their confrontation became the prosecution's foundation. The state charged Derek with second-degree murder. His defense team argued for manslaughter, claiming no premeditation existed, just a momentary loss of control during a heated argument. The prosecution countered with evidence of escalating possessiveness in Derek's communications, suggesting the pushing was deliberate. Local newspapers initially reported the story with restraint. Tragedy at affluent family's vacation home. National media quickly transformed it into sensation. Forbidden stepmother affair ends in bloodshed. Cable news channels dispatched reporters to stand outside the property's gates, delivering dramatic retellings while neighbors provided vague statements about always knowing something wasn't right with that family. If you're finding this case disturbing, you're not alone. Hit that like button and share this video to raise awareness about how isolated environments can accelerate dangerous relationship dynamics. The warning signs are often visible in retrospect. Comment below with your thoughts on what might have prevented this tragedy. Public fascination centered on the taboo relationship rather than the death itself. Social media exploded with amateur analyses of family photos, highlighting moments where Derek and Veronica stood too close or made eye contact too long. Overnight, their private destruction became public entertainment. The investigation uncovered multiple failings that contributed to the tragedy. The vacation property lacked security cameras that might have discouraged inappropriate behavior. Robert Fulton's prolonged absence created emotional vacuums in both Derek and Veronica's lives. Multiple warning signs went unreported. Luis, the pool attendant, later admitted noticing their inappropriate closeness but feared losing his job by speaking up. Most critically, investigators identified how complete isolation accelerated their relationship's toxicity. With no outside perspectives to challenge their behavior, their moral boundaries eroded rapidly. The case prompted discussions about second home supervision, stepfamily counseling requirements, and the psychological impacts of long-term parental absence on young adults. Prison psychologists diagnosed Derek with acute stress disorder transitioning into PTSD during his pretrial detention. He alternated between emotional numbness and overwhelming grief, often unable to speak during therapy sessions. In recorded interviews, he repeatedly asked about funeral arrangements he wasn't permitted to attend. The defendant exhibits classic trauma response with severe dissociative features, noted Dr. Melissa Chun in court documents. He intellectually acknowledges pushing Veronica, but emotionally cannot reconcile himself as the cause of her death. Derek's defense team ordered comprehensive psychological evaluations revealing untreated abandonment issues from his mother's death, compounded by his father's emotional distance. These factors created vulnerability for inappropriate attachment, though experts disagreed whether this mitigated his responsibility. During rare moments of clarity, Derek wrote letters to his father that remained unsent. "I destroyed everything because I couldn't distinguish between loneliness and love." One confession read, "I keep seeing her eyes in that final moment, surprised, but not scared, like she always knew we would end in destruction." The case prompted broader examination of modern family structures. Family therapists cited it when advocating for mandatory counseling during blended family formations. Educational institutions developed programming addressing appropriate boundaries in step relationships, particularly for adolescents still forming identity. Social media platforms faced criticism for algorithmic amplification of the most salacious aspects, with ethics researchers documenting how clickbait headlines emphasized forbidden romance over domestic violence realities. Privacy advocates pointed to the exploitation of private family tragedy for public consumption. Mental health professionals highlighted how physical isolation combined with emotional neglect creates perfect conditions for boundary violations. The case became referenced in psychology textbooks examining how environmental factors influence moral decision-making. This tragedy raises important questions about responsibility. Who could have intervened? The absent father? The house staff who noticed warning signs? The mental health system that never treated Derek's abandonment trauma? Tag someone who works with young adults and might benefit from this cautionary tale. And if you've experienced the complexities of stepfamily dynamics, share this video to start important conversations about healthy boundaries. The more we discuss these issues openly, the more we protect vulnerable individuals.